All right, as a quick disclaimer before we get started, this presentation is not legally binding in its own right, and the Federal Transit Administration will not rely upon it as a separate basis for affirmative enforcement actions or other administrative penalty. Conformity with this document, as distinct from existing statutes and regulations, is voluntary only, and nonconformity will not affect rights and obligations under existing statutes and regulations. This slide here identifies the contact information you should use when you're unable to contact your assigned NTD analyst or when you're having technical issues with the NTD reporting system. The NTD reporting application support help desk is available from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. This help desk should be used as a resource to help with questions regarding requests across all FTA-specific applications and systems, such as login issues, system errors or bugs, or performance issues within the reporting system itself. The non-technical NTD program support help desk is staffed by an NTD analyst Monday through Friday between the hours of 8 a.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern Time. You should contact this help desk if you have any questions or need clarification regarding an NTD policy or a reporting requirement. Please note you should only use this NTD help desk here when you're unable to reach your assigned NTD analyst. They should always be your first go-to, but in the case that they are unavailable, feel free to email this NTD help email on the screen. My name is Melissa Conti. I'm the Deputy Project Manager supporting the NTD program, and I'll be presenting the first portion of today's webinar. I'm joined today by Lillian Pecoraro, who will be presenting the second portion of our webinar on our reporting system enhancements for the year. This slide identifies our FTA program contacts. Chelsea Champlin is the NTD program manager from the Office of Budget and Policy. The goal of today's webinar is to cover the system changes for the NTD reporting system effective for report year 2025. This includes clarifications, new requirements from the recent Federal Register notice, and system enhancements and updates. This is designed for all reporter types, and we'll go ahead and cover all of those sections now. So we're first going to cover the new requirements as a result of the final Federal Register notice published earlier this summer. This includes new requirements for the GTFS Shapes text file, GTFS Agency ID field requirement, the consolidation of the A10 Stations and Maintenance Facilities form with the A15 Transit Asset Management Facilities form, a clarification on stations that span both sides of the right-of-way for rail or bus rapid transit, new fields on the A20 transitway mileage form for rail modes, an exemption from full reporting requirements for reporters predominantly serving rural areas, and lastly, a new field to report whether your agency is voluntarily reporting to the NTD. After we cover the new Federal Register notice changes, we'll then dive into some standard policy clarifications that will be published in the 2025 NTD policy manuals. This will include a recent change in capitalization threshold outlined by the Office of Management and Budget, guidance on how to report certain funds related to the sale and disposal of assets, clarification on non-public transportation expenses, data requirements for those using volunteer resources, days operated on the S10 service form for van pool providers, and additional detail on one of the data collection methods for agencies using APC data. Continuing on with these policy clarifications, we'll then move on to cover information related to small and temporary structures and A15 reporting, a change to intersection and grade crossing reporting for street running rail modes on the A20 transitway mileage form, an optional field for agencies reporting biodiesel energy consumption, a change in requirement for average lifetime miles for ferry boat modes, a clarification on consecutive passenger miles traveled or PMT sampling waivers, additional details for the independent auditor's statement for federal funding allocation data for those using APC data, and lastly, some friendly reminders about APC recertification for 2025 and PMT sampling for 2026. For the system updates, I'll pass it along to Lillian. She's one of our senior analysts and leads our IT coordination. She will be reviewing several enhancements such as in-system APC certifications, improvements to the P40 reportable segments dashboard, form constraint validation to improve data entry, the removal of the organization type on urban and tribal subrecipient forms, new calculated fields on the S10 service form, and lastly, some friendly reminders about in-system functionality that can make completing your NTD report easier. All right, on this slide, we have our NTD resources. So this includes our page for Federal Register Notice or FRN links for NTD changes, a recorded webinar from this past year on tips and tools to navigate NTD resources, the NTD reporting policy manuals for full and reduced reporters, and our trainings and conferences page. Our policy manuals should be published soon, and you'll receive a blast notice via the NTD reporting system once they are available on our website. For our trainings, we have 2 webinars offerings coming up on September 4th for our state DOT and subrecipient reporters, and one on September 9th for our reduced and tribal reporters. So we encourage you to check those out. We also have on our trainings page, we have full courses offered by NTI for full urban reporters, rural reporters, and tribal reporters this fall. And some of those for our full urban reporter courses are on-site trainings in person. So if you're interested in that, please check out our trainings and conferences page. Here we have a list of the NTD due dates based on your agency's fiscal year end. So our NTD reports are due on the following dates. We have October 31st, January 31st, and April 30th. So these are assigned depending on your agency's reported fiscal year end date. Please note the last date to submit report revisions from your reporting group here in this table on the slide. After this date, your report will not be sent back for any further revisions, so please make sure you work with your analyst through validation. We're planning to launch the report year 2025 forms for our October reporting group by mid to late September. So your analyst will reach out to you with all of the welcome information for report year 2025 as soon as those forms are available for data entry. Okay, so first we'll cover the Federal Register Notice or FRN changes for report year 2025. Here we have the link to the final Federal Register Notice, which was published in July of this year. You can find the original proposed notice on our Rules and Regulations page. The FRN was originally proposed back in 2024, and the comment period was extended into early 2025. FTA recently published the final notice, which addresses the changes in NTD and will be the majority of what we cover here today. So first, we have the General Transit Feed Specification, or GTFS, shapes requirement. Beginning in report year 2025, all full reporters will be required to submit a shapes text file in their GTFS feeds for any fixed route modes. This requirement will begin in report year 2026 for our reduced, rural, and tribal reporters. The GTFS shapes text file includes details on the path that your vehicles are traveling on their route and how the transit stops fit together in a specific route or trip. Submitting this shapes text file with your GTFS feed allows users to visualize routes and trips if they map your GTFS feed. We will have a link on slide 19 that I will highlight for best practices on the development of those shapes text files. Also, for our GTFS requirement, all agencies submitting a feed for their fixed route modes in 2025 will now need to include a value for the agency ID field on the P50 form in the reporting system. The agency ID is a field in the GTFS spec in the underlying files of agency, fare attributes, and route text files. For some agencies, you may already have an agency ID established if you're part of a regional feed or a combined feed with other providers. You will report that value in the agency ID field on the P50 form if that's the case. For those that do not have a set agency ID, you should use any value that uniquely identifies your agency. This can be a value such as your NTD ID or information such as you're doing business as. Here's what the agency ID field will look like on the P50 form in the NTD reporting system. This field was present in report year 2024, but will now be required for all agencies submitting web links via the P50 form. For assistance with GTFS development, maintenance, or other questions, we encourage you to contact National RTAP. The team at RTAP supports all transit agencies, both rural and urban, and can help build a feed, assist you with your shapes files, or answer questions on GTFS best practices. If you need any help, RTAP hosts live support meetings on Thursdays between 1 and 1:30 Eastern Time, but we can also help you set up a meeting with the folks at RTAP. If you're interested in that, please let us know. You can contact your analyst and we can put you in touch with the folks at RTAP and get your questions answered. We also recommend checking out RTAP's website for future webinar series for GTFS assistance. As I mentioned earlier, we've also linked the GTFS Mobility Data Shapes Guidance resource here on the slide. This page outlines tips on shapes file development and best practices. Now we'll cover the consolidation of the A10 Stations and Maintenance Facilities form with the A15 Transit Asset Management Facilities Inventory form. In report year 2025, the A10 form will no longer be available. The information previously captured via the A10 form will be integrated into the A15 form. The goal of this consolidation is to simplify facilities reporting and avoid duplication between multiple forms in the NTD. The A15 will now include new fields on the facility level for maintenance facilities and passenger stations to capture the information previously reported on the A10 forms. In order to do this, agencies will now need to indicate the mode and the type of service for each facility. By reporting type of service, this will inform the appropriate data selections for the new fields capturing ownership type. In order to do this, we recommend using the import-export functionality in the NTD system, especially if you have many facilities to update. There are no changes to which administrative facilities are reportable, but there are some changes to maintenance facilities reporting, which we'll cover on the next slide. Previously, maintenance facilities were only reportable if an agency had some level of capital responsibility and the facility was used more than incidentally for transit service. Beginning in report year 2025, in order to capture leased facilities, agencies must report all maintenance facilities on the A15 form, regardless of capital responsibility. The incidental use criteria still applies to maintenance facilities. If they are incidentally used for transit service, they are still not reportable on the A15. For maintenance facilities, agencies will now report information on the maintenance facility type and capacity and right of use or ownership type, which includes leased or owned. And then based on the mode and type of service, indicate who leases or owns the facility. Here's what the maintenance facility type and capacity selections will look like on the A15 form. These options in the dropdown will mirror the categories previously available on the A10 form. We have our general maintenance facilities less than 200 vehicles, general maintenance facility between 200 and 300 vehicles, general maintenance facility greater than 300 vehicles, and heavy maintenance facility. Once you've selected the maintenance type and capacity, then you'll select the right of use, either owned or leased. Based on your selection, you will then complete the owned or leased by or leased from options. These are specific to the mode and type of service listed for the facility. For any directly operated modes, the owned or leased option by default will be public agency. For PT modes, you will see the service provider option open for selection on the form. For passenger stations on the A15, we will now collect the data for ADA accessibility, elevators, and escalators to preserve this information that was previously collected on the A10 form. On the facility entries for passenger stations, you will see a radio button to indicate if a facility is ADA accessible or not. Then you'll have two data fields to enter the number of elevators and escalators in the facility if that's applicable. For elevators and escalators, the guidance remains the same. Do not report any used solely for staff or freight, and please exclude moving sidewalks from these counts. For ADA accessibility, you'll select yes for any facilities that comply with Regulation 49 FR Part 37, and no for any facilities that do not comply. You can see the reference link here on the slide for the regulation outlining ADA accessibility requirements. Next, we have a clarification on reporting stations for rail modes and bus rapid transit modes that span both sides of the right-of-way. To standardize reporting, agencies must report these stations as a single facility on the A15 form if the following criteria are met. The condition assessments are conducted comprehensively, where all subcomponents are assessed in the same procedure or assessment. Passengers can access the facility on both sides of the right-of-way without leaving the facility or the designated pedestrian crossing areas. And the ownership, size, and other attributes reported on the A15 form are the same across the facility. On the A20 transitway mileage form, rail modes will now have 3 new categories to report in order to align the NTD asset categories more closely with FTA's Transit Economics Requirements Model, or TERM. These new fields will be fan plants and pump rooms under the power and signal section, and turntables under the special track work section. For each new element, agencies will report the standard fields: account, expected service years when new, transit agency capital responsibility, agency with shared responsibility, if applicable, and then the construction or age information. First, we have pump rooms. A pump room is an asset throughout rail operations that help control water in underground systems. This will be under the power and signal section of the A20 form, as seen here on the slide. Also under the power and signal section, we have fan plants. Fan plants are assets that assist with the ventilation in underground systems. Lastly, for the A20, we have turntables. So agencies should provide a count of turntables which are used to turn train cars in a different direction. This count should also include turntables located in the rail yard or in other locations. This can be found under the special track work section of the A20 form. Next, we're going to cover an exemption from full reporting requirements for agencies predominantly serving rural areas. This exemption is for agencies reporting to the urban module that otherwise would meet full reporting criteria, but predominantly serve rural areas. Agencies reporting over 30 vehicles operated at maximum service, or VOMs, and meeting the following criteria on the slide may request an exemption from full reporting requirements. The criteria are the following. They must receive 5311 funding. They must operate fewer total VOMs in urbanized areas than total VOMs in rural areas. And they must allocate more total vehicle revenue miles to the rural areas than the urbanized areas. FTA will automatically identify agencies that would qualify for this exemption based on the prior year's data. Moving forward, agencies meeting this criteria will be able to select this exemption option during their report year kickoff. During the kickoff, you'll be able to confirm operational statistics to ensure no changes from the previous year impact this exemption. The VOMs operated in the urbanized areas and the rural areas will be estimated by comparing the total 5307 funding to the total federal funding for your agency. Please note that agencies considering this exemption should coordinate with their local planning agency in the urban areas in which they operate, as well as their state DOT. Reduced reporters do not report passenger miles traveled data, which are part of the 5307 urbanized area apportionment formula. This is something to consider if you do meet the criteria for this exemption. Beginning in report year 2025, all agencies reporting to the NTD will now report whether they are a voluntary reporter on the B10 identification form. If you receive or benefit from 5307 or 5311 funding, you'll select no. This also includes agencies that have continuing grant requirements through these programs. Other agencies required to report to the NTD due to transit asset management requirements will also select no to this question on the B10. The additional changes from the FRN related to safety and security reporting will be covered in upcoming resources. Please refer back to the proposed and final FRN documents to review changes related to cybersecurity event reporting and disabling damage reporting. All right, next we're going to move on to general policy clarifications for report year 2025. First, we have the capitalization threshold change by the Office of Management and Budget. The capitalization threshold has changed from $5,000 to $10,000. Agencies may still determine their own capitalization thresholds at a local level as long as the per unit cost is $10,000 or less. We have a reference to OMB's guidance here on the slide if you are interested. Next, we have a clarification for reporting funds related to the sale and disposal of assets. Agencies required to repay FTA for grant funds used to purchase an asset should report any repayment as an other reconciling item, funds applied on the F40. Agencies report any non-public transportation expenses as other reconciling items on the F40. Pilot programs are not considered public transportation and therefore follow the same reporting guidance for expenses as other non-public transportation services. Agencies should report any expenses related to time-limited pilot programs as other reconciling items. Next, we have volunteer data requirements. Agencies reporting data associated with volunteer resources should include all required NTD data. This includes financial, service, and asset data. For our van pool modes on the S10 service form, we have a clarification about days operated. You should only report days operated when service was provided. If service was available but not provided, that does not count as a day operated for the S10 form. In the 2025 policy manual, we will have a detailed description of one of the optional methods for data collections for APCs. On the D10 CEO certification form, a method for passenger miles traveled and unlinked passenger trip data is scaled up using all available APC data. This option has been on the D10 form, and the manual will now have a description of this method to help users select the correct method on their D10 form. This is only applicable to agencies using certified APC data and is just one of several sampling options available. Next, we have some clarifications on reporting for the A15 form. Agencies should not include any temporary use facilities that are being utilized while another facility undergoes construction. Additionally, any small structures such as guard shacks or booths should only be inventoried if they are part of a larger facility and assessed as such for the condition assessment. On the A20 transitway mileage form, to ensure consistency between the safety and security reporting module and the annual reporting module, there is now a field for intersections to capture these data for our street running rail modes. Previously, some of these intersections may have been reported under grade crossings. An intersection is a crossing over of two streets or roads. It may be a T intersection, multi-leg intersection, or traffic circle configuration. An intersection does not have to cross at a perpendicular angle. In areas where there are blocks, the crossing streets or roads are perpendicular to each other. However, two roads may cross at a different angle. For street running operations, you should report each street intersection that the street running rail passes through. For our full reporters reporting biodiesel energy consumption, they will now have an optional field to indicate which type of biodiesel blend they used during the fiscal year. For example, this could be blend B5, B20, or other variations of biodiesel. This optional field will appear on the A30 revenue vehicle inventory form after you enter a value for biodiesel gallons. Also on our A30 revenue vehicle inventory form, the average lifetime miles field is now optional for ferry boat fleets. Since vessels typically use other indicators of age, such as engine hours, The average lifetime miles field is no longer required for these ferry boat fleets. However, ferry boats should still report the miles this year field on the A30 form. Next, we have a clarification on the procedure for passenger miles traveled or PMT waivers. Agencies requesting consecutive year waivers for PMT sampling without a partial sample or APC certification effort ongoing will need to report 0 passenger miles traveled for the year in question. Agencies should make the best effort to begin a sampling procedure or pursue another means of PMT collection to ensure they avoid consecutive PMT waivers. The Independent Auditor Statement for Federal Funding Allocation Data, or IAS-FFA, suggested procedures in the NTD manual will now include details on APCs. Agencies choosing to use these suggested procedures can find guidance for their auditor on how to review APC data and the NTD report if that applies to them. Lastly, we have some reminders about APCs and PMT sampling. Report year 2025 is an APC recertification or APC benchmarking year. If you use APC data to report to the NTD, please make sure you submit your recertification documents via the NTD reporting system for review. Report year 2026 is our next mandatory sampling year for passenger miles traveled. For some agencies, their fiscal 26 year has already begun. If you do sample for PMT, please make sure you've already begun your sample or are prepared to do so once your 2026 fiscal year begins. If you're unsure of your sampling requirement or frequency, please feel free to reach out to your analyst and we can help you determine when you should submit that information. For the last section of our presentation, I'm going to pass it off to Lillian to cover our system enhancements and in-system updates for this year.
Hello, I'm Lillian Pecoraro, and I will talk to you about some system updates that we made for the 2025 report year. So this year we added the automatic passenger counter or APC certification process to the system. So previously the APC certification was handled via email with your analyst. And 2025 is a recertification year for agencies with APCs. So we added the process to be within the NTD site for better tracking and documentation. So now with the process in the system, you'll be able to track the status of your request and view any documents submitted in the e-file library on your agency's profile page. The APC certification is available on the report package. By clicking on related actions, you'll see that arrow is pointing to it. And then click on create reporter request. Only the CEO delegate, and NTD contact users are able to see this option. And then once you are on the reporter request page, you can select APC certification. You will have the ability to upload supporting documents when you submit your request. And then once it is submitted, your analyst and QA will review it and may return it if they have any questions. This year, we also made some improvements to the P40 reportable segment form. We added the ability to remove a segment from a request that has multiple segments. Previously, when there was a multiple segment request, but one segment could not be approved, the only option was to cancel the whole request and then resubmit it with the not approved segment removed. So now if there are any segments within a request that need to be removed, you can remove them directly on the request and resubmit it without having to cancel and then re-enter all the data for each segment. We also added the ability for segments with an out of revenue service date to be updated. So previously, once a segment had an out of revenue service date, the system would not let you make any further updates to that segment. So sometimes segments do go back in service or an update needs to be made to the out of revenue service date. In this case, the segment modification will work like any other. You can make the update by clicking on Modify Segment and then submit it to your analyst for review. The last update we made is to add new filters on the form to more easily search for segments. For some reporters with many segments, the P40 form can be cumbersome, so we've added some filters. We added a UZA filter, which would be useful if you operate in multiple UZAs. We added segment ID and segment name lookups. So if you're looking for a specific segment, you can target it by typing in a portion of the segment ID or segment name instead of having to arrow through the table to find what you're looking for. We added a filter for rail modes versus non-rail modes that will be useful if you operate both types of modes. And we also added a segment type filter specific for bus modes. So we hope these improvements make this form easier to navigate. We have added several new form constraints to various forms. These are fields that previously generated validation issues after submission. So by adding them as constraints, it will ensure that the correct data are reported before submission and will stop these from being issues that come back after your analyst reviews the report. On the B10 form, we removed the organization type for urban and tribal subrecipients that are part of a state report. So urban tribal subrecipients also have a direct urban or tribal report that they fill out separately from the state report. Since their organization type is recorded on their direct report, it is no longer needed on the subrecipient report. On the S10, we added calculated values for the annual total vehicle revenue miles, vehicle revenue hours, and vehicles operated in maximum service, instead of having these fields be directly entered. So we require that your monthly totals for these data points match your annual total on the S10. This was a validation issue previously, but we are making these values automated on the S10, so they will always match the MR20 form. And then if you need to update your annual total on the S10 form, you can do so by updating the MR20 form. So we wanted to point out that we have tooltips on certain fields throughout the NTD report. If you see a question mark icon and hover over it, it will provide some information about that field. Or in some cases, like the SNS 60, it will provide examples of the types of events that are reported in each category. So hopefully those will be useful when you are navigating through the forms. Another reminder is to use the import-export function. Most forms have import and export capability. This allows you to export the form into an Excel file. You can update the data within the file and then import it back to the form. You may find this useful, for example, if you have a lot of facilities on the A15 form that need to be updated this year to enter data for new fields. It might be more efficient. You'll spend less time if you just do it directly on the Excel file and import it rather than clicking into each individual facility.
All right, thanks, Lillian. So that concludes our presentation for this afternoon. Here's our contact information, as well as the help desk again, which is open from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern time if you can't get a hold of your analyst. If you do need any help identifying who your analyst is or have questions, please feel free to reach out to the help desk and we can help put you in touch with the right folks. Thanks everyone again for taking the time to join us today. And I'll now turn it back to Lori to close us out for today.
Thanks. Are we going to tackle any of the questions in the Q&A box or?
Yes, we can definitely do that. I was working on typing some of the answers. And of course, with any new requirements, there may be some that we may need to take offline and kind of chat through with your analyst. So that's definitely, I think, the case for the first one about fan plants, or particularly about pump rooms. So I'm not sure what agency you're from, but if you want to chat that in response to your question, I can help put you in touch with myself and your analyst to talk further.
Thank you, Melissa. That was for Mohab, Junaid, if you're
Yes.
still on. You want to check in? I will we'll go to the next question while we're waiting. Oh, everyone who's saying thank you, if you're hopping off the call and not listening to the Q&A portion, after a light edit, we will be I will be posting this on our YouTube page. The link was way earlier in the chat, but let me grab it again. Just give me a little bit of time. Cut off the music at the beginning so we don't get in trouble. Okay, that's our YouTube page. Hopefully it will be there within, I don't know, next week maybe. That said, let's go back to the questions. This is from Jay Culver. We have two turntables for turning single bogies, trucks, but not an entire streetcar. Will those small turntables be considered reportable? Oh, it says Melissa's typing.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I
It's
must be
okay.
okay. Yes, so I believe those would be reportable as long as they are in your rail yard or other location. We did receive a similar question about drop tables and maintenance facilities, which aren't quite the same. So my initial answer is yes, but if it's located within a maintenance facility, we may need to talk about that a little bit further. We're looking more for turntables that are embedded in your rail track, whether in the yard or elsewhere. So I'm not sure if that answers your question or if you want to chat further again. We appreciate, these conversations with all of you, especially for new requirements. Not everything is always black and white, so it's nice to talk through and get some details because every agency is different.
Thank you. Sorry, I was scrolling through the questions. So someone said that it seems as though the slides being used are different than the handout. I'm not sure why that would be. If anyone wants to give us some more information, I would love to get to the bottom of that.
Yeah, it should be I'm using the same one I delivered to Amy.
Yeah, and that's what we made the people are saying I did have someone say that they only had 31 slides, so I'm thinking it might be a timing issue. Maybe the download didn't complete before they grabbed the file, or maybe it got interrupted or something. I just wanted to see if other people were having similar. Okay, David, Julie, thank you, Dana. Okay. No, well, okay. Thank you, everyone. Anonymous who posted that, I don't know who you were, but maybe try the download again. If not, I can probably email them to you. They're big, but they're not, prohibitively large file size. Sherry Underwood says she only has 31 pages. Okay, so Jeremy, Sherry, and Catherine. Oh, there's 31 pages with 61 slides. Okay, it should be two per page. So yes, 31 pages, 62 slides. Think about it. It works. Okay. Back to the questions. Someone says, Margot says the link on page 7 does not work, and I don't know if page 7 is page 7 of the handouts or slide 7 of the presentation. So maybe, let me see. Where's my handouts? All right, well, I'm sorry. I don't know why the link
Yeah, I
doesn't
can
work, or
try to put that in the
like,
chat.
is it slide 7? It could be slide 4. Well, it's 2 pages. I'm not doing math. Nobody wants that. Okay, we will get back to you about the link, the non-working link. Geraldina says, what is the turnaround for APC certification outcome after data has been submitted and questions have been addressed?
Yeah, that's a great question. So typically, it will be a couple of business days for your analyst to review the APC certification, and then our quality assurance team to review the APC certification. Once they've gone back and forth with you on questions and everything is addressed, then it should be approved in the reporting system. And you can find that in your e-file library. You should be able to see your APC certification requests and the status.
Melissa, Jeremy's saying it's slide 14 where the link isn't working.
Okay.
You want to check that out? I don't know. You can do it live.
Yeah, I'm not sharing that.
I don't know which. Like, was the word Federal Register Notice supposed to go to the link underneath it, or are those two separate ones? Let's see if mine works.
They should be the same. So
Okay.
just for the sake of the handouts, we do put the full URL underneath, but I just linked that. It's just a formatting issue when we put the slides into the handout. So I typically am in the practice of putting the whole URL in case anyone wants to see it.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, so Jeremy's saying that the full URL did not work, but Thalisa, I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, said that it works. So
Okay.
maybe it could be how you're viewing it. I can't troubleshoot everyone's computers.
Yeah, either way, if it's helpful, Jeremy, on if you can get to the NTD rules and regulations page, that has the table of all of the FRNs related to NTD, and the one at the top will be the most recent federal register notice that has the final and the original proposed. So you should be able to get to that Federal Register docket through the NTD rules and regulations page. So hopefully that works.
Okay. Well, there's one more question in the Q&A box, and I'm seeing some stuff come up in the chat. So let me do the Q&A box first. It's from Nadir. I'm sorry if I messed that up. Will the 2025 policy manual have more clarifications on the fan plants, pump rooms, and turntable additions?
Yeah, so in terms of the actual definition, those come straight from the Federal Register notice. There is a little bit of additional guidance on how to report the count of each of the fan plants and pump rooms. And it has a little bit of guidance there related to how you can determine if there are multiple and how you come up with the count. So there's a little bit more guidance, but I would point you to the final Federal Register notice for the actual definitions.
Okay. All right, I was gonna go to the chat. Okay, they're coming. More questions are coming in. I'm gonna put a pin in that for a second. Go back to the chat. I think these are related too. It says if fiscal year 25 report is due on October 31st, when should we submit our recertification packet by? And that's pretty much the same question that just came in.
Yes, so we encourage you to submit that before your report is due or with your original submission. But if you're working on it and you'll be a little bit past your original due date, that's okay. Just communicate that with your analyst if you're still working on the recertification. Typically, the APC recertification process, both on the agency end and the review process, doesn't take very long. So if we need to work through normal validation of your report while you finalize your APC recertification documents, that's totally fine. Just make sure your analyst is aware of that so we can just get that status marked down for you that you're in progress.
In the chat, where is the e-file library? Someone,
Yep.
wait.
Yeah, the e-file library. So if you are in the NTD reporting system on the main page for NTD, you can go through your agency's profile. You should be able to see e-file as one of the options under your profile once you click into your NTD ID. And then under your e-file is communications such as blast notices or the closeout records for previous years. And so you should be able to see the status of any requests as well. So extension requests, APC certification, you should be able to find that there. If you can't, let us know. We can have your analyst give you a call.
Okay. Back to the Q&A box. This is from Minty. I noticed that both upcoming, question for me. It's about the urban reporting courses that are currently on a wait list. So I'll take this opportunity to tell everyone that I don't have the schedule in front of me, so this is off the top of my head, but we are going to be opening up the registration. We're announcing 6 months of courses, but registration will only be available for the first 3 months. We're finding that people are registering for things far out and then things come up or they forget that they registered or registering for multiple things. So we're going to give it a try, saying, hey, we have these courses coming up. We'll open registration on this date, but for now we're just allowing registration on these. So that should be coming later the week. And I believe there's some more NTD courses in there. I hope that answered. You're welcome. Okay, so that's the Q&A, and the chat box says, when is did we do this already? When is the 2025 policy manual going to be released? Did we ask that? I feel like we asked that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we did, but we are hoping to release that soon. Hopefully by the end of August. We're just working on some compliance, 508 compliance for the manuals themselves before being published. So there are a couple of administrative steps on that end, but we will get those out as soon as we can. And we will be sending a blast notice via the NTD system once those are available on our website.
Great, thank you. Okay, so the questions have been answered. The chat box is still. So while that's happening, in case there's any last minute questions, I'm going to say thank you to everyone. Remind everyone on here that you will be getting a link with the survey. So please take that. We love your feedback. It helps us inform future sessions. Melissa, Lillian, thanks again. Great as always. I think there was a question in the chat and it got scrolled. Nope, that was the one I already answered. Okay, ignore me. Wait. Chat, Q&A box questions. Will the upcoming, that's for me, for courses. Will the upcoming courses in September and October go over the changes for fiscal year 25? I believe those updates were made prior to us starting reporting season. So I'm going with yes.
Yep, I can confirm that's right.
And then I understand that APC recertification is due with the NTD report, but what do you mean by sampling for fiscal year 26?
Sure, that's a great question, and I'm happy to have the chance to clarify. So for some agencies that don't use APC for data collection for passenger miles traveled, or don't have another means to collect 100% count of passenger miles, some agencies do a manual sample, either following their own sampling plan or using the NTD sampling method to either use ride checkers or video to collect a sample throughout a particular fiscal year. So we have agencies that are on different schedules or frequencies for their PMT sampling requirements, depending on the size of the agency. So some of our agencies are required to sample for passenger miles traveled on an annual basis if they're a larger agency. And then some of our agencies that don't meet that criteria are required to do a passenger miles traveled sample every 3 years. So fiscal year 2026 is our next mandatory passenger miles traveled sampling year for agencies that applies to that are on that every 3-year schedule. So if you're unsure of that, or if you use APCs, it's likely that doesn't apply to you since APCs are a different data collection method for passenger miles traveled. But feel free to reach out to your analyst and we can, again, help you figure out what you've been reporting for data collection methods on your past NTD reports, and then talk to you about what your requirement is based on your agency's size.
Thank you, Melissa. So Hoiming and I'm sorry if that's so Hoiming and I said it backwards, is asking about providing a course for beginners. We don't have a beginner's course per se. Well, is there anything like that, a manual or a guide or a video for people just getting started, or is it our NTD urban courses as basic as it gets?
Yeah, so I would say if you are a full reporter in the urban module, the NTI urban course is going to be the most comprehensive, longest course, going over all of the forms in detail, activities. Great offering if you are a full reporter. If you're not a full reporter, I would recommend you head to NTI's YouTube channel. We have an NTD reporting fundamentals webinar that can give you some fundamentals. And a kind of zoomed out overview of NTD requirements, the different modules of data that we collect, such as asset, financial, service data, resource data. So that would be a good place to start. It's also self-paced. You can review it at your leisure. And then depending on your reporter type, we do have some other courses that are available for rural reporters and tribal reporters. We offer those once a year. Those are later this fall that are again more in depth. The courses are more in depth, but we also have webinars for our reduced reporters, rural reporters, tribal reporters, and our state DOT reporters as well. And so those will go over step by step which forms are applicable to you, which forms you would fill out. So I'd recommend start with the YouTube page, and then if you have questions, you can contact the help desk as well. We'd be happy to get you, signed up and aware of which resources would be best for you based on your reporter type.
Great. Okay, we're going back to fan plants and pump rooms. On the reporting of those, there was a reference to underground systems. Does an underground system refer to a tunnel or underground structure used for trains, cars, etc. to travel through? Or are we considering the underground areas of a passenger station or facility, even though that facility may technically be an at-grade or aerial structure?
Sure, that's a good question. I believe it would be the latter. But again, I think because this is such a new data collection effort, these types of questions, we'd like to review together to ensure that we're consistent across all reports and the intent of what we want to cover, what we want to capture. So if you could let us know what agency you're with, we can chat with you. And these types of questions are great to work into future resources as well. Because I'm sure if you have the question, other agencies likely will have the question as well.
On the P40 form, can it be available to update the 2025 data now, not waiting until January 2026?
Yes, so the P40 form by default is a profile form. So that is always available to you in your profile in the NTD. The report package forms are the ones that are not available until a certain time, depending on your fiscal year. So if a form is part of your normal NTD package, those forms won't be available for you until after your 2025 fiscal year is over. And then it will become available to you.
Great. From Rowan. Can you clarify the content explained in slide 56? Certain data points on S10, A30, and D10 proved to be difficult to validate, so they're being separated out. So are they being separated out as a unique validation issue? That was a question.
Yeah, so to clarify here, so this is an improvement to the interface for data entry. So we had validation issues that we were raising with agencies for particular data points that were essentially impossible or quote bad data because it was indicating that certain values were greater than others that wouldn't be possible. So what we've done is we've put in system constraints at the form level so that we are not having to raise data validation issues after the fact. So when you're entering data directly into the form, if you select, for example, the model field, that's a pretty straightforward one, you have to report that as an urban agency. So previously that field could be null, and then we would have to raise that during validation with you to ask you to complete the field. Now you'll see a message on the form. It won't let you save without that value because we need that value completed. And for the S10 ones, for the train revenue miles, for example, it's impossible to have train revenue miles greater than passenger car revenue miles. So we've put a constraint there so that if you enter a value for train revenue miles that's greater than passenger car revenue miles, the system wouldn't allow you to submit that data. So I hope that clarifies. It's not necessarily separating them out as a unique validation issue. It's just bringing that validation a little bit sooner so that you'll see that message for those data when you enter it into the form itself versus us bringing it up when we return your report for the first revision or round of validation.
Great. Glad you are set straight, Rowan. And right now, one more in the chat. For fiscal years ending September 30th, when should APC certification documentation be submitted?
Again, you can submit that with your original submission. So if you have a fiscal year end of September 30th, your report would be due the end of January. But if you have it beforehand, you're more than welcome to submit it beforehand. There's no issue with that. And then again, if you are not going to have it with your original submission for your 2025 report, just communicate that to your analyst so we know where you are in terms of completing that.
Great. Okay. There are no more open questions. There's nothing else in the chat. If you have additional questions, refer to the last slide in your handouts, which has the contact information on it. And or you can email us and we can point you in the right direction. NTI is happy to help out. I guess that's it. I thanked everyone. I mentioned the survey. I guess we're done. Thank you, everyone. I will see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. I hope you have a good
Thank
afternoon.
you.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.